The Sustainable Voice, bringing you big successes from small places worldwide.
Welcome back to the Sustainable Voice. This is your co-host Ashish and Leigh. How are you?
I'm great, thank you.
Oh,
How are you?
I'm good. We got an exciting episode where we're finally. I'm off my soapbox. I'm off my soapbox. I'm off the scorched earth soapbox where I started basically, I think, cussing out everybody in politics in one country or another. I'm off that soapbox.
Okay.
So we're I'm back.
It's okay. It's okay. We need to hear somebody needs to say the hard things. So
Absolutely right. So I've been binge watching Suits, and I mean, I've watched it when it's on TV. I've been binge watching, and I love that one thing. I got a hard truth to share with you. So that's the same, you know. So I think that's my thing for now. If I just say something I'll be like, I got a hard truth to share with you. Just leave it there.
I like it. We can do that. Hard truths
That's
are good. Maybe we need to finish every podcast with a little hard truth.
I think what I'll start doing is anytime I share a hard truth, I'll just send them a bottle of Mike's Hard Lemonade and go, here you go.
There
to
you
wash
go.
to wash down the hard truth. Here you go.
Perfect. Perfect.
Yeah, that wasn't a product plug, by the way. I wasn't. So we were just talking. I mean, we're staying in Latin America, but we've been talking about evolution of countries, and today we're going to be talking about beyond Cartagena, right?
Mhm.
So that's kind of where it comes in.
Mhm.
So tell me, what do you know about Colombia? I don't think you've been yet. I don't know if you have you been there in all your
N-
adventures at all?
No, my Columbia is through your lens,
Okay.
and
Well, that's a warped lens.
well, we always tease, Paul and Carol and I tease that it's suspicious that you've been there 40 some odd times.
41 times 42 will be this year.
So I think you're probably an honorary son of Columbia. But yeah,
I am.
everything I know is through your lens and through your connections, and every single person that we've connected with has just been amazing. So, and then my other connection, I think my brother went, who's he's a pretty hardcore traveler. He goes to a lot of off the beaten path places, but I remember thinking he was insane when he went.
Mhm.
That was a few years ago, but he absolutely loved it. And that kind of opened my eyes to rethink Colombia. I think a lot of people are doing that now.
Yeah, I mean, there you go. I mean, that's the whole thing. I mean,
Mhm.
since we Colombia's been on a lot of people's bucket lists for at least the last 12 years. And I remember, I'll take you back when I first visited, because we're going to be talking about going beyond like places like Cartagena. So everybody goes
Mhm.
is Cartagena. My first visit was in 2006. And I remember there was a gentleman from the tourist board who came by the office and said, oh, we have this plan to promote Colombia. You should really go visit it. And I'm looking at it going, really? Then I got intrigued. I'm like, there's something here. I think I want to go check it out.
Mhm.
So then I ended up going. I was like, all right, everything that could go wrong went wrong. Like you name it. To the point where I land at the airport, and this is when Bogota Airport was like rickety, needed a tetanus shot to go in. It
Mhm.
made LaGuardia Airport look nice. And I know LaGuardia looks really nice right now. So all you New Yorkers listening right now, I'm not knocking on you. I'm not. I promise. I promise. LaGuardia right now looks good, but you have to be honest with me. Back before these renovations, LaGuardia looked like a rust hole.
Yeah.
Well, Bogota El Dorado Airport looked like that rust heap as well. You walk through it, just kind of go, I don't want to scratch or touch anything.
Yeah.
So
Well, and probably plenty of, I would think, uh, guys walking around with machine guns.
yep, yep,
Yeah.
yep, 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 and it was there. So I remember, and nobody was there to pick me up. So I
Mm.
call, oh, I'm here to take you to your hotel. I'm like, okay. And it's a guide, and we're talking in the car. She propositions me in the car. Now, I've been married at that point for 3 years. It's 21 years this year, but three
Wow.
years. And I stop and I go, no. And
Yeah.
because of the fact that trafficking, human trafficking, sex trafficking was still unfortunately a major part of Colombia's economy, it was almost like they thought it was expected.
Yeah.
Something dawned on me on that initial journey in, like, there's something here.
Mhm.
I'm not talking about the proposition part, but the fact that she did it thinking that that's what I expected. And then I found out it's because apparently a lot of Asians came to Colombia and places like Colombia expecting that, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah,
So I
that.
had to sit down with her. I go, I'm practicing Hindu, and in our religion, we worship women.
Mm,
The people who really were, our supreme beings are women, and
mm.
we worship them. At least I do. Just ask my wife. So, so there's there. So it was going through and kind of talking about that. But then as we are doing that, I started noticing other things. We got to the hotel. The check-in process wasn't as smooth, and it wasn't they weren't trying, 'cause they didn't know.
Mhm.
Then we got to Cartagena, to Santa Marta, to other places, and it was each place just got progressively, just lower and lower and lower in terms of what somebody would expect, what somebody would do. So that was kind of where it came in. So as we were talking about that, as we were going through that, I started saying, there's something here. By the time I got to my fourth day in the country, I realized there's something here that's just drawing me back. This is a country that isn't supposed to have tourism. I mean, we all know Colombia's history. It wasn't supposed to have tourism. There's something here. And I realized, it's one thing if a country just doesn't want to try tourism. And there are countries like that where you just tell them that the work ethic just isn't there. You need six people for the job of two.
Yeah.
Then there are countries where they just don't know any better yet. And that was Colombia.
Mm.
And it was like a diamond in the rough. And that was 2006. You fast forward to today. Oh my gosh. I
Yeah.
mean, it is, holy cow. The way people are just connected to service and what they're doing and this. I mean, it's just incredible what
Wow.
people are willing to do and want to do to help you in different forms. That's just huge,
Yeah.
in terms of it. So that's why I think today's episode is so good, because we're talking about going beyond Cartagena. Every cruise ship and their mother's cruise ship arrives into Cartagena, and everybody flies into Cartagena. And look, I love Cartagena,
Hmm.
but there's so much more. Uh,
Yeah. And I remember my parents were things changed and they weren't able to go, but they were planning to go to Colombia this spring and but only Cartagena. And I kept saying, I think you can go further. I think you can go further. But even them flying in, they were not going to get out of Cartagena.
right. Right. No, and that's most people felt the same way, right? So
Hmm.
you've met Abraham, obviously.
Yeah.
So he's like my brother. He
Mhm.
is my brother, actually. I profess to say that there are certain countries in the world, Peru's one of them, Colombia is one of them, Kenya is one of them, where I would take these people as my brother
Mhm.
or my sister.
Mhm.
In most cases, over certain blood relatives. That these are
Yeah.
my real family.
Yeah. Your
Uh,
chosen family.
I chosen family, and I often joke with some of the guides in Colombia. I joke with some of the people in Peru, of course, in Kenya, and I say, and I said this actually even to my college roommate. He's one of those people as well. Is that you're the sibling I should have had.
Mm.
And I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but more just saying, that cousin, sister, brother, whatever the case.
Yeah.
You're the one I should have had.
Yeah.
You're the one I choose to have. And I think that was pretty cool.
That's
In
very
terms of it.
cool.
Okay, so when we start talking about where people go in Cartagena, what people do, you were talking about your parents and trips. To finish that story, because that was a cool story.
They're interesting. I mean, they're intrepid travelers, but my dad is 84, my mom is 79.
Yeah,
And they do a lot of traveling and they're very active,
yeah,
like to get out and walk and do and experience culture. But because I don't know, because of their age, they tend to be a little bit they like to be a little bit more isolated. But my impression from talking to you is that just in general, Colombia is a very warm and welcoming country where they would have been taken under anyone's wing anywhere they went, so they would have been okay. But I just had a hard time convincing of them of that. But I know just from the connections I've had with you and that that truly would have been the case for them.
it,
So,
it really is. I often say this to people when going to Colombia. So when you visit a country, the people that are there will work hard for you. Colombian people work twice as hard. because there's an elephant in the room, right? About their history, about the cartels and everything. There's this elephant sitting in the room, and I had a conversation with that's one thing. I had a conversation with all these locals, and when you ask, for example, somebody in Medellin versus Cartagena versus Bogota about politics or about neighboring countries or about geopolitical, you get different answers. The one thing where they all answer the same thing, I've asked this one question pretty much across the board in pretty much every city I've gone to. I've explained to them, why do you want people to love Colombia? And they said, because people see us through a different lens. They feel sorry for us. They think that we are still this country of crime and cartels and and Netflix and other things, other organizations just glamorize and Hollywoodize it. And look, obviously a story to be told. However, they said all of them across the board, whether it's a graffiti artist in Bogota, a coffee cooperative in Huila, a musician in Medellin, a fisherman in Cartagena, it's been the same answer. We don't want to live with this over our head. So we work twice as hard to get people to see who we really are. Now they say it in different forms. People in Cartagena are a bit more removed from it because they were never really as engulfed in it. I mean, it was still affecting them, but not like it did in Medellin or in Cali or other places. And this is the one thing you hear in unison. That's one thing when countries go through change in politics, change in regime, you start wondering, well, how is the new regime going to talk about tourism? The one thing with what's happened is that every single president that's come into power has put tourism at the center, right? In different degrees, but at the center.
Mm-hmm.
And if there was ever a case for a country where, sustainable tourism in a responsible way is responsible for a stability or a record of stability in economics and politics, whatnot, this is it.
Wow.
This is it. This is an example of it. You've gone from your presidential elections go from one extreme to the other, just like they do here.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, the one part of the economy that is still protected is tourism.
That's
No matter what.
fantastic.
It's amazing. It's amazing. So
And
that's
you've
why.
really seen that transform through all the years that you've been,
Absolutely
for
right.
sure.
Absolutely right. And I've seen it firsthand. And that's why when we talk about going beyond Cartagena, it's so important because now you think about it, right? You went from a country that was, well, we're thinking of starting tourism to now all of a sudden having an organization like Disney plan a whole movie of Encanto around Colombian themes, and none of it is in a major city. The street with that hill is in Barichara, which is part of Santander, which used to be all tobacco, and now it's tourism. The house is in the coffee region in Pereira, in Armenia, and it's in the coffee region there. You start thinking about that. The groves you see, some of those are from the southwestern part of the country. When I took my family for the first time to Colombia, took them to Villavicencio to go tracking jaguars, setting up motion sensing cameras to track jaguars. Jaguar in the forest. That these are places that wouldn't be open, right? Last June, I was with a group in Caño Cristales. Go back 10 years, you wouldn't get access here because this is if you watch some of these movies with the American made of the movies, they show these big, huge plantations and tree jungles and cartels. That was this.
Yeah.
That was here.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. Take Caño Cristales as an example, okay? It's Rainbow River. It's a river's luminescent algae that changes color underneath, right? Underneath all that is tar fields. Now, put yourself anywhere in any other part of the world. Somebody finds oil. What is the first thing that happens?
Oh my God. Yeah.
There's
Dollar
gold
sign.
in there,
Yeah,
Hills.
gold. Yep. Yep. Dig a well.
They go up.
Yeah.
Nada. Nothing.
No. Why?
Nothing.
Why?
Well, oil is still their biggest export, right?
Yeah.
Be it tourism is number two. We actually had even ahead of coffee. Tourism is even ahead of coffee.
Yeah.
But this is protected land. This is to the point where if you were to go swimming in this river, they tell you, because it's all biologists that are here, please don't wear sunscreen, don't wear sunblock, don't wear insect repellent, don't wear anything, just cover up, get in the water, without any chemicals on your body.
Yeah.
Then when you come out, you can put whatever you want on it afterwards. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool.
It's there. You go to Barichara, for example, and it's a small town. It is very just local, right?
Mhm.
Those old westerns, those small towns with the cantina and the little church and everything.
Yeah,
That's Barichara.
that's so awesome.
That's Barichara. I mean,
Oh,
it's one of my favorite places, right? Even Medellin, you go out into Medellin, get out of the city and get into places, like Marinilla, getting into places near Camino 13 or the other caminos. You start talking to people. I remember there's one person, I remember his name is Kamal. He's a guide in Camino 13. And so at one point, him and his son, he's a musician, him and his son were on, I think, X Factor as musicians.
ah,
So I had to ask him in Spanish, how was Simon Cowell? And he told me in Spanish, he goes, and that gringo wouldn't last 5 minutes here. So that was
that's awesome.
hilarious. Uh, ha-
Awesome.
have you ever been to a place like that? Have you ever been to a place like that where it seems like out of a storybook? Small place just seems like it's completely out of a storybook.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, several that are weird like that. One, which actually my daughter works in the summer, which is kind of weird, is Whittier, Alaska, because they all live in the same building, and it's just
Mm.
like this really strange, weird vibe. Even getting there, you feel like you're in another time warp. But also, just when I worked for Lindblad and working down in the Sea of Cortez, and that was
Yeah,
back in the 80s, and things were really different down there. And a lot of
yeah,
what you're describing, a lot of those towns were sort of undiscovered and
yeah,
very
yeah.
much like that, where towns that seem like time had forgotten. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah,
pretty
you
cool.
you just said it best. You've just nailed it. Towns that seem like time has forgotten. That is exactly what you get in a place like what you're looking at, right? The video, the picture behind you, that's Guatapé. That's
Okay.
actually outside of Medellin by about an hour and a half.
Yeah.
So some of these are shops, souvenirs, but if you go to other parts of Colombia, you see where it still looks like this, but there's no souvenir shops.
Mm.
It's just local food stalls. It's just street food. People are joking and laughing and everything else. It's just like they do here.
Are
That's
they
the one.
resentful of travelers coming in? Sorry.
God, no, no, no.
No, they're
Gosh,
okay
no.
with it.
That's actually that's an interesting question because I've been to certain countries like in Asia, certain countries in other countries in Latin America where you go through some of these markets where they become resentful and like
Hmm.
one they'll flip you off
Yeah.
if you're a tourist or whatever the case. Look, in certain parts, like if you go to certain parts of Bogota, certain parts of Cartagena, yeah, I guess. Um,
Hmm.
Not really, but it's very rare, which is the unique thing about and we talked about this. Remember, we talked about in previous episodes about the disconnect that
Yeah.
between direct and indirect in terms of the contribution tourism makes to the economy.
Hmm.
Colombia doesn't have that. Whether a person is connected to tourism or not, every single person in that country understands tourism. And it is amazing to see. So, whether you are in Tayrona, whether you are in Barranquilla, whether you are in San Agustin, in Huila, in Popayan, in wherever, pick the place, right? Cali, this everybody there understands. So take Popayan as an example. There's Purasé National Park, which is a volcanic national park that's there. There's a market called the Sylvia Market that happens every Tuesday that's there. So if you go there, you got to be there for the local market. But there's a little hacienda that's there that was the former residence of Simon Bolivar. That was here. Middle of nowhere, by the way.
Hmm.
Complete middle of nowhere. That's what makes it great. Or you go into the Tatacoa Desert, for example, all these different places. It just changes in terms of what happens and what's there, which is just unique,
Mm.
very very unique in terms of it.
Is it think about some of the Cartagena especially, but then as it filters out, as more tourists are coming, do you sense that there's any kind of souring about? Because I think like the first people who probably are coming like are people like you who are intrepid travelers
Yeah,
who travel light footstep, are respectful,
yeah,
make it easy for the locals to appreciate tourism because the people that are traveling there are kind and leaving only footsteps, but then you get into bigger cities where, they're suddenly several thousand people ascend on them or descend on them all at once.
yeah.
How does that change the mood and like their attitude about tourism? I
That's
wonder if you
that's a
see it evolving
no,
somehow.
you know what? That's a great question. It's a delicate balance, right? So,
Mhm.
look, am I seeing it in certain places in Colombia? Not yet. In Cartagena, certain places you could see, like for example, there's, give you an example, La Boquilla, which is a fishing village outside of Cartagena. It is just littered with plastic straws everywhere because of all these cruise ships that come in, people that go visit just in large groups, bus tours, and just plastic straws. So we spent a number of years delivering paper straws to them, saying,
Mm.
please use these instead. The people are great. The people there are fantastic. You know, in terms of it, but it's just they didn't know any better. So you do start seeing those elements in different places. Like, okay, you know, not everywhere, but like in Cartagena, especially, there's a really delicate balance that occurs here, and one that has to be paid attention to. So, as you said, yeah, it depends on who's coming, and I think it depends on expectations, right? So, as you said, you and I travel the same way. The people that we talk to in our circle, they travel the same way. They're respectful. They have a soft footprint. They want to leave the place better than how they found it, right? There's a level of just awe when they're visiting a country. It's a privilege, not a right.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing that gets lost sometimes. I'll give an example. This happened just in December in Egypt. Actually, we were in line of security at the airport, and we were waiting in line, and this happened to there was people in front of us, locals in front of us. I guess some European travelers that just kind of helped themselves to getting in the front of the line, and
Mm.
just went got there, and he said, "I'm sorry, you have to go to the back of the line." He goes, "What does it matter? We're here." We're all going through together. He goes, no, please, you have to go to the back of the line. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be rude. And the fact that the person is having to apologize for this
Mm.
when they're right and saying, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be rude, but you need to go to
Yeah.
the back of the line. But the traveler is not understanding that just simply cutting a line. Then what happened next is what really put an exclamation point on it. The local looked at the travelers, the European travelers, and said, please, with all my respect, go back to the queen at that time and tell her she does not own us anymore.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
I just stopped. And I felt like saying, well, I'm Indian, so if you're going to say that, can you please ask her for our jewels back too while you're at it? I mean, it was, but it was a microcosm of exactly what you're talking about, right?
Mhm.
So if people show up there and they feel that they are privileged to visit the country, awesome. If they show up and it's this my inalienable right to be here, different story altogether.
Mhm.
And that's another thing about unique about Colombia is if you go to outskirts of Medellin and outskirts of Cartagena, again beyond Cartagena, there's a lot of dark Colombians and there for the link to Africa. You know the link, the Afro beats and everything else. A lot of these were brought over as slaves. Their ancestors brought over as slaves during that time. A lot of people don't talk about that, right? We talk about
Mhm.
slavery just one dimensional. It's not. It's multi-dimensional. But so that became part of it as well in terms of this conversation. That's huge. That's something that is powerful. When you go here and the fact that they're talking about the drum beat. So, for example, one particular guy, his name is Jason, up in the outskirts of Camino 13 in Medellin. Talks about drum beats and hydroponics and whatnot. 23 years ago, 22 years ago, there were tanks rolled up where he was. And this is a ghetto that people move to get out of the city because of roadside bombs going off during the cartels being there. Now, think about this for a second, okay? So, I have a bunch of friends in Medellin that talk about this. Like, okay, when you were 7, 8, 9, 10, 13, 14, 15 years old, what are your memories of? And when we'll talk about, playing with GI Joes or this or whatever, right?
Mhm.
He'll talk about having to pack up and move 5 times because roadside bombs were going off on our street.
Wow.
Just think about that. Put that in context for a second. You understand why this country works so hard
Yeah.
at what they do.
Yeah.
Um,
And
yeah,
really, we're talking about this generation making it right. This isn't, I mean, righting the wrongs of maybe the
that's right.
previous, and not even a whole generation, but just people within that
That's right.
um time.
You bring up a really good point because in certain countries, this is happening right now for example, in Kashmir. This is happening in, of course, parts of the Middle East. The generation that drove the conflict are now being replaced by generations who were not around when the conflict started.
Mm.
and all of a sudden it's a different mindset. Right or wrong, right or wrong, you have the people who say, no, you are supposed to not like this race of people. You're
Right.
supposed to not like this group of people because that's what our ancestors did. Versus, the new generation asking more questions. And what
Mm.
you just said is exactly right. In Colombia, it's the current generation.
Mm-hmm.
It's the current generation that is navigating out of what they created,
Yeah.
right? And navigating out of it and going through a different element of what it is. It's huge. And I think that very well may be what makes Colombia so unique. I remember I shared with you just how aggressively our podcast is growing and just how well it's doing. And you saw the still the highest rated episode is the one about locally owned, right? Locally
Yeah.
owned hotels, locally owned. I would venture to say that Colombia is a country that is locally owned.
Oh, I love
As a
that.
as a country, it is locally owned.
Yeah.
It's I've not seen anything like it. And I'm from Africa, and I can tell you right now, Kenya, as much as I love Kenya, is not locally owned.
Mm-hmm.
It has been economically colonized. So it's pretty much almost every part of Africa. You go to Latin America, go to other parts, go to Argentina, go to Chile, Peru, there is some level of economic colonization. I'm not saying it doesn't exist in Colombia, but
Yeah.
there's just something different
The
that's
money
here.
staying in the communities.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. It's
Wow.
and the dynamic, right? If you go to Bogota and Cartagena and you ask about Venezuelans coming to the country, you'll get a different answer. If you go to Medellin and Camino 13, you'll get an answer that says, well, when we had issues, they took us in.
Oh,
Now it's
I was
our
going to
turn.
ask you about what racism, whether that was prevalent in Colombia. It sounds like maybe not as much as some other
Not as much.
countries.
I mean, nothing's ever impossible to avoid,
Yeah.
but not as much. Not as much. So
Did you went there when you first went there, of course, tourism was just maybe a napkin idea, really, but did you have to work hard to win the trust of the people? I mean,
mm,
as you've gone back, and
very much
at
so.
some point you became a son of Colombia. You weren't no doubt you were a native son, but that happened over time, I imagine.
It happened over time. I think actually, I mean, it's more yeah, I mean, I'm honored they felt this way. I mean, it's
Hmm.
great. I mean, last trip you know, we talked to people and they appreciate what you've done. Yeah, when you first went there, people that were backpacking through the country, people that were driving across the continent to go through Colombia, some European travelers. I remember there's one hotel in Cartagena. It was a French owner. I remember he told me, he goes, "Oh, you're from America." Oh, yes, 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 yes. This was in 2006, and I'd gone back and seen it in 2009 and 10. In 2010, he said, "Okay, you have to bring me Joe Biden. Joe Biden has to be my hotel." I'm like, "Oh, okay, I'll work on that. No problem." But there was, I mean, he was, and I thought for a second, I said, okay, first of all, he's an expat that obviously isn't in the Colombia, but he's an expat that came in. So there's some
Yeah.
level of people who just moved there and stayed there. And that was, I
Hmm.
think, powerful. Beyond that, though, the fact that he associated right away that because I live in the US and I'm somehow magically have at that time, the vice president of the country and now a current president on speed dial is a different story in itself. But he's like, my hotel, you have to bring him to my hotel.
Oh,
Okay.
well, he actually held you in high regard then. He thought you were a big
I
man.
I
You're a big, important
guess
man. You
I
know Joe
guess
Biden.
I didn't want to break it to him that I was a janitor. Huh? I don't want to break it to him. That community project in Medellin, the one with the kitchen that we just built.
Yeah.
So that one, everybody there was funny. They don't know anything much about politics, but they all know who Michael Jordan is. They all know who LeBron James is, and so I would joke with them and say, "All right," in Spanish, I would tell them, "All right, who do you like better, Michael Jordan or LeBron James?" And I would then preface it by saying in Spanish, "If you say LeBron James, I'm never coming back again." Uh, but you have those kinds of comments, those conversations. But that's the one thing I think the trust is exactly right. It was somebody. When you look at countries, and this happens in parts of Africa, we have this saying in Kenya, which is, people will love to accept help. The problem is not the help. The problem is not knowing when you have to leave. So,
Oh,
person coming in to help is great. Somebody coming in saying, "Look, I can help you." That's all well and good. Coming to help is well and good. but knowing when you're not welcomed anymore, knowing when when the help turns into dependence is a different
Right.
thing.
That's a
And
delicate balance.
yeah, and that's what I think, Colombia's got some of these challenges coming up later on where, yeah, look, tourism is growing, and they're going to have to find a way to balance it in some form, one way or another. And that's
Mm.
coming up next. But these are not challenges they can't address. They can definitely address these challenges going forward. It just needs to be done in a smart way. And they've, so far, they haven't made too many missteps. They've been really focused on protecting tourism because they've understood how powerful it is. And that's the thing, right? I mean, you take a look at any protest happening in any country in the world, any dysfunction, any disturbance. If the country truly and fully understood the power of tourism all the way through, would that be the case? Would that
Wow.
be, would it be a problem?
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Interesting.
yeah.
Well, it turns out we are recording this on International Women's Day. So I'm going to put
Well,
you on the spot and ask you, is there a woman in or two in Colombia, maybe even outside
yes,
of Cartagena that come to mind as champions of sustainable?
yes, yes, yes. There actually, as a matter of fact, there is one. Well, there's multiple. There's multiple. But the one that comes to mind is a woman named Doña Socorro. Doña Socorro is the one who started that community center in Medellin
Mm.
for children who've been displaced in Camino 13. You just have to talk to her. And when I first met her, she talked about shoes. And when somebody comes to you and asks you for help, they say, well, I need. She didn't come to me and say I need. She said, the kids need shoes. If you could
Mm.
help with shoes. It started with shoes. And then she goes, we can feed 25 people a day, but we can feed 100 if we had a better kitchen. And all of a sudden, so we got the kitchen, and
Yeah.
you should have seen her. She is one of the most empowered people I've ever met in my entire life because she never ever feels less than. She
Mm.
never ever feels like she's asking for charity, and she never ever feels like she's beneath anybody. And I remember she just having a conversation. She goes, "I don't know where you came from," and she's saying it to us, like she goes, "I don't know where you came from," and this is during the pandemic.
Mm.
So
Wow.
she's definitely one of them that are there. I mean, the other one's my mother.
Yeah.
I'm the son of a family of refugees from Sudan,
Yeah.
and so the other one's my mother. She's for reasons and not everybody else knows, but she is. But you definitely know she's one of the
Yeah.
strongest people you'll ever meet in your entire life.
Yeah.
Um,
Have you been able
and
to take her to Colombia?
Uh, I was planning on taking them next October. I
Okay.
should I should have taken them last October.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it's coming up. I'm planning next this May when I go. I'm thinking of telling her to come with me.
Hmm.
And just come with me and let her go and see. Because she's been asking, she's like, I want to see what all the fuss is about. All right, come on.
Why my son has been there
Yeah, yeah,
41
that's
times.
right. She's like, I want to come and see what the fuss is about. I'm like, what do you mean fuss? She's like, all you do is talk about Colombia. I'm like, yeah. So she goes, I just need to come and see why, what's for. And I was telling her, I said, there are two places in the world that I really want tourism to develop the right way. And Colombia is one of them, and it has. The other one's Sudan.
Mm.
I've been visiting there as a child, and obviously it's in a bad place right now with conflict and whatnot. It
Hmm.
is a place that's still one of my dreams one day to have tourism done the right way in Sudan. So that I can take people back to where my mother was born, take people back to where I spent so many times as a kid, so much time as a kid sliding down a mud hill in Wadmudli, in different areas and whatnot. But it's the same thing. It's the dream that I have in Sudan is a dream, and that's where I think I connect because I talk to a lot of people who started tourism in Colombia, the people who just went back in '06. That was the dream they had. This
Yeah.
was, they said this was the country I grew up playing here and doing this and doing that, not the country that you see in the news.
Yeah.
This is what, and I want to show people that. So, like, one of my friends is a guide in Cartagena, Vicky. She'll take people to ice cream places. I know this person because he does gelato here and ice cream here. If we go to, let's say, Leon will have lomo saltado and lomo this. Oh, this is a place here. I come here as a kid and eat here and do this and da 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 da. All right.
Yeah.
there's a local scene to what this looks like, and that I think
Yeah.
is a cool experience.
The magic of everyday things brought to life by guides, just everyday life type experiences suddenly become magical when
That's right.
when you're put when you're with the right person, when you're
That's
with
right.
the right guide and
That's
all that.
exactly right. That's
So
exactly right. So
that's so cool,
yeah.
Ashish.
See, no soapbox today.
No soapbox today. You don't have any hard truths you need to share here at the end?
I need to get back to Colombia.
Yeah, yeah,
You're
yeah.
coming with me, by the way.
Okay, I'm
So
there.
done and done. So yeah, that's the hard
Yeah.
truth. And I guess what's the hard truth is that if somebody asked me, I was born in Kenya and my heart is in Kenya, but my love is in Colombia.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's it. And I remember I told my wife, and my wife goes, "That's just because you look at the women there." I'm like, "No, that's not why." Okay, it's not the only reason why, but it's not
Well,
why.
it's that, yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, you did start out being propositioned your first time there.
I know wasn't planned, but you know what?
Yeah.
It is. When you talk to people in Colombia, there's just their hearts are. It's just there's something about how you talk to them. Again, it's this a chip on their shoulder. Like I said earlier, they work twice as hard to make sure that they're special there. And
Yeah.
yeah, the people there are gorgeous. They're very they are when you look at their faces and everything else on both sides, right? Men and women,
Mhm.
they're very attractive.
Yeah.
And the cool thing about that is, up until a certain point, it was expected that that's what they flaunt.
Mm.
They don't anymore, and not well, again, not impossible, but they move away from that. Now it's the essence of the country that comes out. You ask somebody, why they want to go to Colombia, 20 years ago, you'll hear some answers you won't like.
Mm.
You ask somebody now why you go to Colombia, and all of a sudden, these answers have substance. But I remember back in '06, I had said this is a sleeping giant waiting to awaken. And I got laughed out of every office I would say that to. Off of countless stages, I say this is a sleeping giant that we must pay attention to. Nobody would listen. And
Yeah.
now I hear people. Somebody comes up and says to me, "I hear Colombia's on the rise. Tourism is popular there." I'll say, "You hear it's on the rise?" She goes, "What do you mean?" I go, "You're about 10 years too late."
Yeah.
It's not on the rise. It's here.
Yeah.
It is here. Now it's about getting beyond the Bogotas and Cartagenas, not excluding them, including them,
Yeah.
but getting there's some really cool bird watching experiences in different areas. There's some really cool just mountain experiences. We talked about some of the Rainbow River, just outdoors.
Mhm.
And it's that country. It's similar to Peru, that it's that country that has pretty much everything you would want in South America is in one country.
That's so
Whether
cool.
it's the mountains, whether it's a desert, whether it's the beach, whether it's this, and it's not the Maldives. Not trying to be the Maldives either.
Yeah.
So that's where it comes in.
Yeah.
So till next time.
Till next time. This
This
has
was
been
fun.
fun. Yeah,
This
it
is
was.
a lot of fun.
Yep.
So, folks, you can see the dynamic that Leigh and I have. This is why we're co-hosting this, because God, you're a lot of fun to be around. You really are.
Aw, you're
It's
swell. Thanks.
we're gonna be at one point. We're gonna record one of these actually on location. Either it's in Colombia, Peru, somewhere. We're gonna record one on
Yep.
location. What's the over and under before this goes off the rails?
The over and under before this goes off the rails.
Yeah, winning that where our conversation just goes off the rails, where
Oh,
we just lose track of
yeah.
of what we're supposed to talk about and just go off the rails. I'm
Yeah.
putting it at like 10 minutes.
Yeah, I think you're about right.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, because we just
Yeah.
have too much fun. We just have too much fun, and all of a sudden we're talking about Timbuktu at one point.
Yep.
Uh,
It's good. It's a good time.
Exactly. Well, Leigh, thank you as always.
You're welcome.
This was great. Everybody, thanks for listening. Till next time, take care.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to The Sustainable Voice. If you have a success story of your own, please reach out and share it with us. We'd love to hear from you. See you next time.